Breaking the Code, Times and Seasons, Part 9, Biblical Synchronisms and Chronology of 457 BC, based on astronomy, archaeology, and history. Introduction. This research proves or illustrates that biblical synchronism and chronology are one of the methods the Creator uses in His Word to engrave His calendar for times and seasons. This method is used also to ascertain the year 457 BC as the beginning year of the prophecy of the 2300 days of Daniel chapter 8 verse 14, and how it relates to His sanctuary. This method, used by the Millerites to ascertain the terminal date of October 22, 1844, as the antitypical Day of Atonement, was based on the Canon of Claudius Ptolemy. The advancement of modern archaeology and astronomy in the middle of the 19th century to today, far from denying this date, actually confirms that important event. In order to appreciate even more this 9-part series, a few factors must be taken into consideration. Factor 1, times and seasons, and the change of calendar. The Great Controversy, page 582. In seeking to cast contempt upon the divine statutes, Satan has perverted the doctrines of the Bible, and errors have thus become incorporated into the faith of thousands who profess to believe the Scripture. The last great conflict between truth and error is but the final struggle of the long-standing controversy concerning the law of God. Upon this battle we are now entering, a battle between the laws of man and the precepts of Jehovah, between the religion of the Bible and the religion of fable and tradition. From the time that Lucifer rebelled in heaven and was cast out on the earth, he watched for a plan to take over the earth, establish his kingdom, and be worshipped. After centuries of trials and errors, from Babel to Babylon, from Medo-Persia to Rome, Lucifer has refined his strategic planning of finally establishing a theocracy, the papacy, a day of rest, Sunday, a kingdom, a church and state government, the Vatican, a sovereignty pontiff, the Pope, to appoint holy days, an appointment of holy days, Easter, Christmas, celebration of Virgin Mary, all days saints, a church and state power with the first papal supremacy for 1260 years at 538 to 1798 AD, such as prophesied in Daniel chapter 7 verse 25, and a second papal supremacy for 1260 days, according to Daniel chapter 12 verses 7 to 13, and Revelation chapter 13 verse 5. Time of trouble and persecution is another one of his strategic planning. The Inquisition, Daniel chapter 7 verse 25, and Revelation chapter 12 verse 6 for 1260 years, as we have seen, from 538 AD to 1798 AD, and in Daniel 12 and Revelation 13 under the national and international Sunday law and a decree still to come. Factor number 2, method used by the Millerite to ascertain 457 BC. And this is taken from Magazine Ministry or Ministry Magazine, April 1988. It is interesting to note that William Miller and his associates use a different method for calculating which of our years corresponded to Artaxerxes' 7th year. Continuing with Ministry Magazine, April 1988, establishing the date of 457 BC by L.P. Tolhurst. Basing their work on Ptolemy Canon, the Millerite came up with the same date as modern chronologists arrive at today. This certainly is a gratifying reassurance as to the trust and worthiness of our position, and should help to fortify our faith in the message we bear to the world. Claudius, Ptolemy Canon. This article was taken from La Via, International Bible Association, online. Greco-Egyptian Claudius Ptolemy lived in the city of Alexandria of Egypt during the 2nd century AD, from 90 to 168 AD. This astronomer worked at the Library of Alexandria and wrote a book called the A Magale Syntaxis, or the Splendid Order. After the Muslim invasion of 646 AD, his work was known by the name of Almagest, and was the largest and most complete treatise on astronomy for 1400 years, until Copernicus developed and published his theory. The Almagest records many eclipses and celestial phenomena, accurately dated in the year, day, and time of the ancient Egyptian calendar of 365 days, and it registers 19 eclipses that took place in the reign of various kings, covering a period of almost 900 years. The relation known as the Ptolemy Canon is actually an appendix of the Almagest. It is a list of the rulers of Babylon, Persia, Macedonia, and Rome, numbered consecutively together with the length of their reigns. This dated sequence allows calculating the length of intervals between the astronomical observations mentioned in the Almagest. The canon starts at the beginning of the first year of the reign of the Babylonian king Nabonassar, which, according to the exact interval provided by the Almagest between that moment and the time of several eclipses, can be set at noon on February 27th in the year 747 BC. In the first Babylonian period, every Egyptian year starts some 4 months earlier than the corresponding month of Nisan or Abib, as may be seen in the way in which the Egyptian years, fixed by the dates of the eclipses in the Almagest, align with the Babylonian years, fixed by the tablet VAT 4956, which sets the 37th year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, and similar tablet STRM Cambyses 400, which refers to the 7th year of the reign of Cambyses, scoring one of the recorded eclipses. The purpose of it was not to provide the complete record of all the kings of different kingdoms. It was only meant to assign a number of years of reign to each one of them. This is why it does not include any ruler who reigned less than a year, and counts the year of accession to the throne regardless of the date of the event as a full year. The years of these reigns are not lunar or solar, but those of the ancient Egyptian calendar of 365 days. And while counting the time backwards, he recedes one more day every 4 years of the Julian calendar. The dating of the canon agrees with the astronomically fixed eclipse of the 37th year of Nebuchadnezzar's rule, but also with another of the preceding reign, and with other 3 of the reign of Amel-Marduk, the evil Merodach of the Bible, the former only 26 years after the beginning of the canon. Ptolemy had at his disposal the documents which after several adversities were still preserved in the Library of Alexandria, and that was despite what Plutarch says was somewhat preserved until the Muslim invasion of 646 AD. In the early 17th century, a copy of Ptolemaic Canon was discovered among some Greek manuscripts and became rapidly the crucial instrument to date the pre-Christian period. Referring now to the Grace Amadon Collection, Part 4, L.H. Wood, Synchronism and Chronology Dates, based on the synchronism from the Millerite in the 1844 era. Factor 3. Method used by the 1939 committee member L.H. Wood to ascertain 457 BC. By taking into consideration the determination of chronological methods, the location of well-authenticated eclipses as anchors, and by applying the proper chronological methods to the reigns of kings, checking the same by the Canon of Ptolemy, and with various clay tablets found in excavation of the sites in question, and dated with definite years in the king's reign, it is possible to apply these various principles in the working out of definite dates. Factor number 4. Modern and biblical archaeology. Modern archaeology in general and biblical archaeology in particular attest of the veracity of the date 457 BC through the various clay tablets found in sites excavated by archaeologists in the 19th century to today. A brief history of archaeology found online. Archaeology had its starts in the European study of history and in people who were interested in the past. King Nabonidus, from 556 to 539 BC, the last king of the Neo-Babylonian Empire, was interested in the past so he could align himself with past glories. He led a revitalizing movement and rebuilt ancient temples. Even back in what one would think was ancient times itself, there was the start of the systematic investigation in the past by Herodotus from 484 to 425 BC. He was the first Western scholar to systematically collect artifacts and test their accuracy. He was also the first to make a compelling narrative of the past. He is known for his set of books, 9 of them, called the Histories, in which he wrote of everything he could find out about different regions. Archaeology later concerned itself with the Antiquarianism movement. Antiquarians studied history with particular attention to ancient artifacts and manuscripts, as well as historical sites. Their focus was to collect artifacts and display them in cabinets of curios, and were usually wealthy people. Antiquarianism also focused on the empirical evidence that existed for the understanding of the past, encapsulated in the motto of the 18th century antiquary Sir Richard Colt Orr: "We speak from facts, not theory." Tentative steps towards the systematization of archaeology as a science took place during the Enlightenment era in Europe in the 17th and 18th centuries. Europe's interest in the remains of Greco-Roman civilization and the rediscovery of classical culture began in the late Middle Age. Flavio Biondo, an Italian Renaissance humanist historian, created a systematic guide to the ruins and topography of ancient Rome in the early 15th century, for which he has been called an early founder of archaeology. In the late 18th to 19th century, archaeology became a national endeavor as personal cabinets of curios turned into national museums. People were now being hired to go out and collect artifacts to make a nation's collection more grand and to show how far a nation's reach extends. An example of this is a man named Giovanni Battista Belzoni, who was hired by Henry Salt, the British consul to Egypt, to gather antiquities for Britain. Napoleon's army carried out excavation during its Egyptian campaign in 1798 to 1801, which also was the first overseas archaeological expedition ever. The emperor took with him a force of 500 civilian scientists, specialists in fields such as biology, chemistry, and languages, in order to carry out a full study of the ancient civilization. The work of Jean-François Champollion in deciphering the Rosetta Stone to discover the hidden meaning of hieroglyphics proved the key to the study of Egyptology. However, prior to the development of modern techniques, excavation tended to be haphazard. The importance of concepts such as stratification and context were completely overlooked. For instance, in 1803, there was a widespread criticism of Thomas Bruce, 7th Earl of Elgin, for removing Elgin marbles from their rightful place on the Parthenon in Athens. The marble sculptures themselves were valued by his critics only for their aesthetic qualities, not for the information they contain about ancient Greek civilization. Undoubtedly, the major technological development in 20th century archaeology was the introduction of radiocarbon dating based on a theory first developed by American scientist Willard Libby in 1949. Despite its many limitations, such as compared to later methods, it is inaccurate as it can only be used on organic matter. It is reliant on data sets to corroborate it. However, the technique brought about a revolution in archaeological understanding. Other developments, often spin-offs from wartime technology, led to other scientific advances. For field archaeologists, the most significant of these was the use of the geophysical survey. This encompasses a number of remote sensing techniques such as aerial photography and satellite imagery. Light detection and ranging, or LIDAR, are also used, a technology which measures the height of the ground surface and other features in large areas of landscape with resolution and accuracy that was not previously available. Archaeologists have also used subsurface remote sensing, such as magnetometry, using such a thing as ground-penetrating radar, or GPR, enabling an advanced picture to be built up of what lies beneath the soil before excavation even commences. The entire Roman town of Viroconium, modern-day Wroxeter, has been surveyed by these methods, though only a small portion has actually been excavated. The application of physical sciences to archaeology, known as archaeometry or archaeological science, is now a major part of archaeology. Archaeology has also come to use Geographic Information System, or GIS technology, a system designed to capture, store, manipulate, analyze, manage, and visualize all types of geospatial data. Factor number 5, archaeological and historical evidences of biblical accuracy. 1 Peter chapter 3 verse 15. Always be ready to give a defense to everyone who asks you a reason for the hope that is in you. taken from William F. Albright from 1891 to 1971, one of the world's most respected archaeologists. He says there can be no doubt that archaeology has confirmed the substantial historicity of Old Testament tradition. Nelson Glueck, a Jewish archaeologist honored even by liberal Time magazine, said, "It may be stated categorically that no archaeological discovery has ever controverted a biblical reference." The written records from over 4,000 years ago, which we take here of Dr. Paolo Mattiu, director of the Italian Archaeological Mission in Syria, hit an archaeological jackpot in 1975. He discovered the greatest third millennium in the BC era archive ever unearthed. It included more than 15,000 cuneiform tablets and fragments and unveiled a Semitic empire that dominated the Middle East more than 4,000 years ago. Its hub was Ebla, where educator scribes filled ancient libraries with written records of history, people, places, and commerce. These early tablets display an ease of expression, an elegance that indicates complete mastery of the cuneiform system by the scribes, says Dr. Giovanni Pettinato, former epigraphist of the Italian mission who worked closely with Dr. Mattia. One can only conclude that writing had been in use at Ebla for a long time before 2500 BC. The Ebla tablets verified the worship of pagan gods such as Baal, Dagon, and Asherah, known previously only from the Bible. They mention the name Abraham and Ur of Chaldees, the biblical Abraham birthplace, as well as other familiar cities and places. The names of cities thought to have been founded much later, such as Beirut and Byblos, leap from the tablets. Damascus and Gaza are mentioned, as well as two of the biblical cities of the plain, Sodom and Gomorrah. Most intriguing of all are the personal names found on the Ebla tablets. They include Abramu or Abraham and Isaim, Isa, for example. And these were taken from the quote that we are submitting here by number. The first one is William F. Albright, The Archaeology and the Religion of Israel. The second one is Nelson Glueck, The Rivers in the Deserts. And the fifth one, number 5, that is brought with the paragraph, this last paragraph, is from Howard Lafay, Ebla, Splendor of an Unknown Empire. Conclusion, Part 9. All the Old Testament synchronisms and chronology are found within the writing of the prophets who have faithfully recorded days, months, and years, and which are often related to the reigns of kings, their death or captivity, as shown in Part 2 of this research, with Ezekiel synchronisms and chronology occurring under King Jehoiakim's captivity. To borrow the words of L. H. Wood once more, by taking into consideration the determination of chronological methods, the location of well-authenticated eclipses as anchors, and by applying the proper chronological methods to the reigns of kings, checking the same by the Canon of Ptolemy, and with various clay tablets found in excavations of the site in question, and dated with definite years in the king's reign, it is possible to apply these various principles in the working out of definite dates. This research has demonstrated the immense value of synchronism and chronology found in the Old Testament by establishing astronomical facts proving their function and purposes for evaluating the biblical calendar in the Bible. To the faithful student who loves to dig deep in the times and seasons of the Creator, synchronisms found from 2 Kings to Malachi, starting with the reign of King Josiah till after the 70-year captivity and return to Jerusalem, become a method to understand all the other synchronisms and calendar engraved throughout the Old and New Testament, either presented by dates or events by the author of the Sacred Book. Based on a study of the date of Artaxerxes' decree to restore and build Jerusalem by the Millerites, and revisited by the General Conference Committee in 1939, this research has actually added 53 synchronisms to the 24 synchronism proposed by L.H. Wood and others, who submitted the comparative chronologies of Neo-Babylonian, Persia, Egypt, and Israel from 627 BC to 443 BC in 1939, and forms Part 4 of the Grace Amadon collection on the report of Committee on Historical Basis, Involvement, and Validity of the October 22, 1844. Of course, out of these 24 synchronisms by L.H. Wood and others, it includes the 14 synchronism of the Book of Ezekiel, chronologically dated by Grace Amadon Studies of Old Testament Synchronism, Ezekiel dates, and found in the Grace Amadon Collection, Box 1, Folder 11. The synchronism and chronology of L.H. Wood, which he proposes in his dissertation, match perfectly the dates submitted in the King James Version Study Bible, historical settings, which you find at the beginning of each book, and at the end of the Bible, copyrighted in 1997. The publishers may have referred to the Millerites and to L.H. Wood chronology to obtain this information. The best suggested method to study Table 4, Part 7 on the synchronism and chronology of 457 BC is to read every biblical synchronism, analyze the event, and carefully compare the date with other events. It is called Rule of Correspondence and is shown in the book of Ezekiel as demonstrated in Part 2 of this series, Table 2. The Grace Amadon Collection, Part 4, page 19. There seems to be no other date in history that has been more firmly established, both from the biblical and history standpoints, than this 7th year of Artaxerxes, from Ezra chapter 7, verse 8. When one realizes that 457 BC is the starting point of the great 2300-day prophecy, reaching from that time down past the crucifixion, April 26, 31 AD, to the time of the great judgment hour of October 22, 1844, one is deeply impressed with the infinite care taken by the Lord in preserving such an important record as this. Again, the synchronism and chronology for this research have been taken and adapted from the Grace Amadon Collection, Part 4, L.H. Wood, based on the synchronism, of course, of the Millerite in the 1844 era. It's also taken from the studies of Old Testament synchronism, the Ezekiel dates, again from the Grace Amadon Collection, Box 1, Folder 11, and the additional 53 synchronism and chronology were gathered from the King James Version Bible by Oded Boilly, the March 2015 time. Through these synchronism and chronology, the Creator reveals the biblical sanctuary calendar based on the luni-solar barley harvest reckoning and his monthly appointed times and including his weekly appointed time, we could say, of the 7th-day Sabbath, which he repeats to Moses in Leviticus chapter 23, verses 1 to 3. Let those who have understanding see and accept this magnificent truth revealed in 1844, 1939, and 1995, and once more at this time since 2005. This has been revealed again once more in 2015, and now in the preparation of this audio in 2019.